I just woke up and I had all these thoughts. Today's April 1st, 2019, and I'm talking quietly. Hopefully you can hear me because there's someone sleeping upstairs. The last video I took, I was on the beach in Mexico and it was beautiful and I felt so happy. And all I felt was joy and peace and gratitude and happiness. And like the human experience, vacation mode ended, and I came back to the cold Midwest of the United States with ice and snow on the ground and wind and gray skies, and kind of fell into a bit of a slump emotionally. Nothing like the days when I had depression. It was just like an emotional flu. And like the sun peeking out of the clouds today, I feel myself regrouping, and I just wanted to share a bunch of thoughts that I was having. So when I woke up this morning, I saw the notification that John Cedars, the John Cedars channel, had a new video and had a picture of Anthony Morris III at a liquor store. So of course I clicked on it. I'm like, what's this about? And I watched the video, and inside my head, I was formulating all these sarcastic jokes about it. And I try to catch myself. Like, humor and sarcasm and joking is normal and fine. And I do it a lot. I grew up in a house where sarcasm was used a lot. And I also want to be aware and cautious that I never cross that line of mocking or putting someone or something down, because I know that that isn't, how do you put it? You don't reform and make changes and improvements by knocking something else down. You take the higher road. Obviously, I'm being idealistic here. I fail at this miserably all the time, but I want to take the higher road. And so I was having this internal dialogue with myself with my reaction to this video, and just thinking about this person who I watched on my big TV screen 4 years ago, and I thought, wow, this is God's channel, God's spokesperson. This is the person this is the skirt of the Jew who I'm supposed to be holding on to so I can have everlasting life. And I respected him because I was told to respect him, them all. And I took the Bethel tours, and I would look up at these, governing body members and think, wow, they're praying all day and reading their Bibles, and I'm so blessed to be in the truth. And then I thought, I think I remember reading his story in a Watchtower years ago, that he wasn't raised as a Jehovah's Witness, that because he was in the war. So obviously he wasn't raised as a Jehovah's Witness, but somehow, whatever, he was met in the door-to-door ministry and got indoctrinated and went up the ladder, and as they say, the rest is history. And thank God for the internet, because we now live in the age where people can't go. I mean, they still try to, obviously, all the time, but you cannot go. It's much more difficult to go and whitewash the barn door and say, all animals are created equal, some more equal than others. Like, you can't do that anymore with the internet, and I'm so grateful for that. Because somebody wrote a comment on that video, like, the history is plastered all over the place, and the fact that he, Tony Morris, has put himself out there on JW Broadcast and all the literature and whatever, he can't go into a liquor store anymore with his anonymity. And I'm grateful for that, because he's just a person. And yeah, I would love to have him to my house in my living room, and I would even go buy his Macallan 12 and serve it to him if we could have a conversation as two humans. But I was listening to another YouTube video, the Shunned Podcast, I think is what it's called, Shunned Podcast. It's really good. They're very long episodes, but like I'm painting my house right now, so I'm just playing these videos in the background, and very therapeutic. The person who does the interviewing, he is a certified life coach, and he's just very sensitive and empathetic and a good listener. And I really appreciate the platform he's creating for people to share their stories in a very safe, therapeutic space. And he doesn't allow comments on the videos, which I think is good, because these people are being really vulnerable and raw. And some of the comments, like even on my own videos, which I don't care, like comment away, trolls. I don't care. So yeah, I really respect his videos. And he made a very insightful comment. It was a video from last year. It's David's story. It's like a 3-part story. I highly recommend it. Because he really takes the time to go through people's childhood and adolescence and adulthood. Like you get the whole story and all the details. And I just enjoy it because it helps you really get into the mindset of what happens to our chemistry when we are raised in that culture. I think of a petri dish. They cultured us and we came out like little bacteria. No, so anyway, so David's story, I don't know if it was part 2 or part 3, but it was into the story. And the interviewer, Michael, said, yeah, in that organization, we really are conditioned, or the conditioning results in losing our humanity and our ability to empathize. And I'm really glad I heard that, because it's helping me communicate with the few and random and far and few between Jehovah's Witnesses who will actually still communicate with me. Because for the last like 2-3 years, I've definitely toned it down over the last year, and I have regrets in how I interacted with Jehovah's Witnesses while I was waking up, but looking back, I don't know if I could have done it any differently, because I was doing the best with the toolbox I had at the time. Rome wasn't built in a day, so I didn't learn like how to communicate with someone who is under a heavy influence of programming and indoctrination. And I was in the anger phase, or I was in the like righteous indignation phase of, why can't you people see this? Like, you're my friends, you know me, why don't you see this the way I'm seeing it? And so I kind of would like come at them with that sort of confrontational energy, and it doesn't work. And now thankfully there's enough videos out here on YouTube, other people confirming that style does not work. But when I heard in that interview that Jehovah's Witnesses really slowly but surely lose their ability to empathize, you can't have a regular conversation with someone who isn't able to empathize. So now I've stopped trying to wake people up, which is why YouTube is so awesome, because then people who are starting to wake up can go search for themselves. Like, they can go seek out information, because they're really not ready to have it brought to them. They have to go look for it. They have to want it. But this whole idea of like having internal conversations reminded me of a sermon I heard yesterday. I went to a church service, and the entire sermon was on Luke chapter 15, the prodigal son. And it was a beautiful, very touching, it almost made me cry reading of Luke 15. And I love how the pastor of that little church said, this is where Jesus tells the Pharisees to accept everybody. And another way you could entitle Luke chapter 15 is sheer grace. And I'm just thinking like the contrast between that and how I was raised, and how I was taught that if I did something bad, I needed to work to earn acceptance and forgiveness and being welcomed back into God's family. Like, the God I was raised with didn't run down the driveway to embrace me and bring me back. And so yeah, anyone who's like struggling and suffering right now or maybe feeling bad, read Luke chapter 15. It's so beautiful and so comforting. And Luke 15 verse 17 says about the son after he was living with the pigs and he was hungry and he realized, wow, I squandered everything. In verse 17 it says, when he, the son, came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired men have more than enough bread while I am dying here from hunger? I will get up and travel to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Make me as one of your hired men. So he got up and he went to his father, and then he had this conversation with his father. So what was interesting, what was brought out was that little dialogue was him having a conversation with himself in his head. So he was rehearsing what he was going to say to his father, and he wasn't even begging for forgiveness, like in this rehearsal. So it just made me think of the Shepherd of the Flock of God book and how these men, the elders, are taught to judge whether someone has worldly or godly sadness. Like that whole system, that whole system. And so then I was having this other thought about, this is not linear. I was having a conversation with someone and he wanted to read the book of Revelation with me and like figure it out. And I was in that mode where I was like, okay, I want to figure this out. I want to like get the trigonometry of Revelation secure so that I'm good to go. And I got kind of stuck in that phase of figuring out Revelation. It's a great book. I still love it, but I don't have the answers. And for a while I was stuck on, well, who is Babylon the Great? Is it religion? Is it a thing? And now I'm just kind of at this place, like maybe Babylon the Great just represents the idea of confusion and man-made structures. Man-made structures to elevate man, like the original Tower of Babel. Men thinking that they could build this structure. I'm rambling, but so getting out of confusion and finding clarity is a daily discipline and exercise. And at the end of the day, it isn't necessarily about things being, well, it isn't about things being black and white, because I don't think hardly anything is black and white. Just a couple things. I saw an amazing play last week. It made me cry uncontrollably. If you can watch it, if it's traveling through your town, it's called All Things I Know to Be True. Wow. And it makes you think, like, what do I know to be true? And when I was younger, I could have filled a little book with all the things I knew to be true. And now I know that humans need each other. Even, science has confirmed that solitary confinement doesn't work. And we are social creatures and we need each other. 48 hours ago, my husband and I laid our dog to rest. We took her to the vet and had her euthanized because she just wasn't letting go at home. She took a really quick turn for the worse, and while I was at home with her, watching her struggle and suffer and be very uncomfortable, I just kept hoping and wishing that she would let go at home, because I wanted her to die here with her dog sister. Let me show you Noah. Noah's all by herself now. And I wanted Ruby to rest in peace here with us. But Ruby was a bulldog and she wouldn't let go. And so we took her into the vet. And the vet was such a good man, is such a good man. Just very gentle and kind and genuinely caring for us. And, he does this probably every day or at least every week for people. So he's confronted with death all the time. And, it could make a person numb or callous, but I felt his tenderness. Anyway, it was a cathartic experience, and I feel peace knowing that my dog isn't suffering. Maybe that's why I wanted to make this video, just to kind of chronicle where I am. My dogs have been such a huge part of my life. Days where I couldn't talk to people, I'd be with my dogs. But maybe that's why Ruby was in my life for those 10 wonderful years, because she got me now to this place where I'm actually having real dialogue with people, not just in these videos. And I did want to mention people who have reached out to me. I apologize if I haven't been in regular communication with you. I think part of it is I connect with things and people visually. Like it's really hard for me to remember names, and it's even harder for me to remember someone's story or their experience based off of an email address. I need to do a better job of organizing people who've been generous enough to reach out and share their stories with me, because I am always touched by the communication I receive. And I feel a little guilty about not being a better friend. But I'll put my Instagram thing down below. I'm better at instant messaging that way, because then I can connect through pictures, because that's how I connect with people, is pictures. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, it's been kind of a crazy couple weeks, the high of being in Mexico and feeling really, really good, and coming back and losing my dog. Oh, and this is what I wanted to share. So I was trying to have a conversation with a Jehovah's Witness, and this person is aware of all the child abuse stuff and the Elders book and the New Light and everything. I've had a lot of conversations with this person, and they're still a very loyal Jehovah's Witness. And so I had to ask myself, well, am I trying to exert control over this person by wanting them to leave? What is my expectation in this relationship? Is my expectation that they leave and now we are reunited? Or how do we do this relationship with me not being a Jehovah's Witness and they are? And I had finished watching the 4-hour documentary Finding Neverland, which is very heavy. I have strong opinions about it. I do believe these two men who shared their story, and I made a post about it, and I was rather surprised that a couple people were like, those men are lying and they were never abused. Whatever, that's a whole other conversation. But it triggered this thought in me, someone who does know about all this in the organization, how can they stand behind the organization and knock on people's doors presenting this religion as a safe place, a good place, especially if you're introducing families with children to it? And I asked this person, how do you reconcile that in your mind? And the person just immediately went to, it's not perfect. It's, the people leading it aren't perfect, which is true. Nobody's perfect. And then the person continued, but look at everything the organization's doing. Look at all their accomplishments. Look at the worldwide brotherhood. Look at all the unity. And that's when I realized, reminding myself that this person has been stripped of their ability to empathize and see real pain and experiences and stories beyond the bubble of the organization. So when I reminded myself of that, I was able to let go of the conversation and just go back to talking about the weather or whatever. It feels so unnatural for me. There's different types of people. I was I got my hair cut and I was talking to the hairdresser, a really cool person, and I was feeling really depressed that day, or just down, gloomy. I was reflecting the weather, and she was like, "How are you?" And I'm like, I feel like the weather today." And I said to her, because she's always super, super cheery, I think hairdressers are really cool people because they have to engage in like uplifting chit chat with their clients all day. And it's like, how do they do that? And if you're watching this, Ultimate Mordecai, Michael Loray, because I know you're what do you call yourself? A barber, hairdresser, hairstylist? How do you do that? How do you stay cheery with all your people? I would be like Eeyore cutting people's hair. Like, I just, so anyway, she is really positive and I'm like, ugh. And I said, with like friends, I am not that friend who is like fun and cheery all the time. I'm like, let's get into like these difficult, deep, dark topics and figure the world out. And she laughed. She's like, that's okay. She's like, we all need those fun, airy fairy friends, and we need people like you too. So anyway, thoughts, self-talk, self-conversations. But I think why I'm feeling as okay as I am with the passing of my dog is because I let it out and I talked about it with people. And I think that holds true. I'm going to conclude with this, that holds true for any sort of grieving process, whether you're grieving the loss of your family because they're shunning you because you left a high control religion, or the death of a loved one, or the death of a dog, or any sort of pain. I know we all grieve differently, but it's been my experience, especially lately, that the more you're able to talk with other people, even if you have to pay a therapist to talk to, I don't mean even if, like that's an excellent, excellent resource. Do it, because we are social creatures and we're not made to suffer in silence. And for that, I am so thankful that I've been able to go beyond the bubble of the environment I was raised in to see that there's a wide, wide world of beautiful people like that vet. Like my vet, he's retiring. I told him, you can't retire. And he said, tell that to my wife. Dear man, like that vet, like my hairdresser, like everybody. And Jehovah's Witnesses. They've just temporarily lost their empathy. And more are finding it again, because I just love watching people's new videos. Have a great day. Happy April 1st. I want a puppy, but I don't know. I'll keep you posted. Bye for now.